Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Gaffer Gear. Today we're going to be looking at the Litepanels Gemini unit and comparing it to the more expensive Arri Skypanel. Let's see how it holds up. First off, I'd like to give a big thank you to Sydney Australasia for allowing me to borrow this unit to do this review. Hence why it's got Sydney Australasia tags all over it. Now, in the interest of disclosure, I'd like to point out that I'm not paid by Sydney Australasia for this review, neither am I paid by Litepanels for this review. And in the interest of full disclosure, I would like to point out that I actually own 6 of the Arri Skypanels, but I'll try my hardest not to let that bias my review of the system. So I'm going to start this review in a real weird place. I'm going to talk about the lock-off handle. This is easily the best lock-off handle I've come across in 20 years of being a gaffer. Literally 2 fingers to lock it off. Now, that's a really good feature of the Lite because unfortunately these guys put the controllers on the bottom. So if you're using this light, say at this height, maybe going through a diff frame or lighting somebody sitting down, you are constantly going to be locking and unlocking to get to the controllers. Now with most lights, that would be a severe pain in the bum. But because these guys have designed a really simple lock-off handle, it doesn't matter at all. It is simply no effort at all to make your adjustment and then put the light back into place. Now, having the light controls underneath is way better than what Arri have done. Arri put theirs on top. So if I had the power supply mounted to the back of the Arri on the unit there, I wouldn't actually be able to see the display. So I'd have to get up on a little ladder or a box or use an Arri remote to see what's going on. So at least with the Gemini, when it's up high, you can see the controls nice and easy. So I'd rather have this than how the Arri is configured. One advantage I think the Gemini has over the Skypanel is everything is built in. So it doesn't have an external power supply. Everything is in the one unit. So you're probably thinking, doesn't that make this actually heavier? Well, I don't have any scales here to give you exact measurements, but by picking them up and feeling them, it feels to me like the Gemini in one unit is actually lighter than the Skypanel head by itself. So that's the Skypanel head without the power supply. So the advantage that has is it makes setting the light up really simple. There's no separate things plugging into other things. All you need to do is plug the one power cable in, flick the on switch, and you're ready to go. It really is that simple. Now it pains me to say this, but one advantage this thing really has over the Skypanel is how simplistic it is to use. One thing I really like about it is the quick color preset buttons. So you can start at 2700 degrees Kelvin, which is the bottom of the range. Next is 3200 degrees Kelvin, which is your tungsten preset. 4,000 degrees, 5,000 degrees, 5,600 degrees Kelvin, which is typically your daylight preset, and the top of the range, 6,000 degrees Kelvin. So let's just put it back to 3,200 degrees Kelvin and I'll run you through the knobs. Check out how simple this is. This is your dimmer control. As you can see, your dimmer control comes up on the display and you can dim in 0.1 of 1% increments, which gives you a very large amount of control. Now that's the same as the Skypanel. The Skypanel can do 0.1. Now your color temperature, or your CCT, correlated color temperature, that adjusts in 10-degree increments on the next knob. Okay, 10-degree increments. That is incredibly fine adjustment and finer than the Skypanel. Now the next thing it has is plus or minus green for matching location lighting. Now I want to show you how simplistic this is to use. Let's just dial in any random stuff for the moment. Now let's imagine we want to save that and come back to that setting later. Well, it's really simple and easy to save things in this unit. At the end here on your presets is a selection from CCT to user. So you just press user. Let's say you want to save it as preset 1. All you do is hold down the preset button and it's saved. Simple as that. Now you can change all your settings around. If you want to go back to how it was, just press preset 1 and it goes back to what your settings were. Now let's have a look at the color modes. So to get to the color modes, you need to get into the menu. To get into the menu, you just depress the button on the end. And now you use the same button or knob to scroll. So let's select color modes. Now you have a choice of hue, saturation and intensity mode or gels mode. Let's have a look at hue, saturation and intensity mode. And that's pretty much the same as every other HSI mode on every other light. So you can adjust your color by adjusting the hue knob. Your saturation can be adjusted, which is how intense the color is, by using the center knob, which is your CCT knob or saturation knob. Now it's worth pointing out that when it desaturates, it mixes white light in. So it's actually mixing in daylight. Now that's actually the industry standard across all brands, that the lights desaturate to daylight. That's worth knowing if you're a cinematographer and you're planning on doing a studio job and you're planning on using this mode. And of course your other knob is your intensity or dimming. Now once again, to show you how simple the system is to use, let's say we want to save this as a preset and we want to save it, say, as preset number 2. We just make sure we're in user and then just hold the button down and it is now saved. Okay, so let's have a look at gels mode. So to get to gels mode, get back to the menu, select colors, now scroll down till you get to gels and you're in the gels mode. Now the CCT button in the gels mode selects whether the light is daylight or tungsten. Unfortunately, it is a hard switch between daylight and tungsten, so it doesn't have, at this stage in the firmware anyway, it doesn't have the flexibility of, say, a Kino Flow Select, but it's hard switched the same as a Skypanel, so between daylight and tungsten. Now you use your menu button to scroll through your gels. Now, let's say we find a gel that we like and we want to save that. Again, really, really simple. Make sure you're in user mode, select the preset you want to go to, just hold that button down, and now it's saved. So now we have quite simply gone through all of the color modes and the CCT mode, and we've saved a preset from each one. So we can call up the preset that we had in CCT mode, we can call up the preset that we had in HSI mode, and we can call up the preset that we just had in the gels mode. So it really, really is a simple system to use. Now, the system, like pretty much every other light on the market, also has special effects modes. So I'm not going to bother going through all those. You pretty much get the idea of what the special effects are. Now let's have a quick look in the system settings menu. Okay, so you've got input, output, select. Now, this has your usual DMX input. So this thing has Cat9 and 5-pin XLR. So you can select your DMX modes. I'm not going to get too much into that. But one thing that is interesting is it does have Bluetooth in the menu. Now, unfortunately, you need an external module that attaches to the unit, which you buy separately. Now, as far as I can tell, that's not available yet. I can't find any information on that product, so I'm guessing that's coming out soon. But the fact that it's going to be Bluetooth enabled at some point is a massive advantage. Being able to operate lights off a mobile phone, I think, is the way of the future. Now, this thing also has a master replica mode. So what that means is you can plug multiple units into each other and operate them as one unit. Now, it's worth pointing out at this point too, that if you have a look at the side of the units here, you can see that the unit is designed so that multiple units can actually stack together and go into bigger yokes. So that's something you can look up online yourself if you're interested. All right, so what many of you are wanting to know is how bright is this compared to the Skypanel? All right, before I get into that, we need to talk about a problem that I found with this unit. This unit has a hotspot through the center of the beam. How you can do that with a Perspex front, I don't know. But the inside third of the beam is 18% hotter than the top and bottom third of the beam. It also doesn't have the beam spread of the Arri Skypanel. So if I was trying to light a studio with coloured light, try and get the whole site evenly lit, I don't think I'd be able to do it. Whereas with the Arri Skypanels, with their immense flood capability, it's easy as, it's not a problem at all with the Skypanels. So that's my first big negative with these. So That changed the way I had to meter. So I did some of my metering with the light pointing directly at the meter, and then I tipped the lights onto a slight angle and did a second reading. With the light spectrometer in the center of the beam, with the light pointing directly at the spectrometer or at the light meter, the Arri Skypanel comes in at only 16% brighter. 16%, so not much in it. Now, if you slightly tilt the lights, the Skypanel comes in at 36% brighter, which that's fair enough. For the price difference, you can't really complain. 36% is not that much for this unit to be behind. However, once again, I have to point out that the spread of the Skypanel is amazing compared to the spread of this. The difference in spread is so much, in fact, that if you take out the diffuser of the Skypanel and put the intensifier in, which increases the light level output, the Skypanel with the intensifier still has a wider, more even beam pattern than you get out of the Gemini. So I did another set of tests comparing the Skypanel with the intensifier against the Gemini for that very reason. And this is where it gets really interesting. The Arri Skypanel is 70% brighter. Now, despite not having the massive even beam of the Arris, I would still be interested in buying some of these Geminis further down the track. I think the Geminis would be perfectly suited to my small van package. Now, I don't use my small van package to light large studio spaces or large factory environments where that massive beam spread would be an advantage. I use my small van package in locations such as houses or offices that have a low ceiling. And in those circumstances, a massive beam spread is a waste of time because you're just lighting the ceiling and the floor. Alright, so how did the Gemini go in terms of delivering the color temperature that you dial into the back? Well, it does surprisingly well. The most it was ever out by was 84 degrees Kelvin, but more typically, it is accurate to within under 15 degrees Kelvin, which is quite an achievement. Here are some of the score results. At 3,200, it rendered in at 3,214 degrees Kelvin. At 4,000 degrees Kelvin, it was smack on the money at 4,000 degrees. And at 5,600 degrees Kelvin, it rendered in at 5,611 degrees Kelvin. Now, compared to the Skypanel, at 3,200 degrees Kelvin, the Skypanel rendered at 3,203. At 4,000 degrees Kelvin, the Skypanel rendered 4,004. And at 5,600 degrees Kelvin, the Skypanel came in at 5,564. So as you can see by those results, both lights are super accurate. I'd give them both a 10 out of 10, and the Gemini goes toe-to-toe with the more expensive Skypanel. Now for me, this is the most important part of any review, talking about how accurately the light renders white. Now everybody goes on about color rendition, but white is the most important thing. White is the foundation that all the colors go on top of. If your foundation's in the wrong place, it doesn't matter how well everything else is rendered. So how do we measure white? Well, we use a DUV test. So I'm on about take 10 of this. So I've actually written this down so I can say it correctly without stuffing it up. Let's see how I go. DUV measures the deviation from the Planckian curve in XY coordinate increment values. So what does that mean? Well, have a look at the graphic here. This graphic shows an XY coordinate map, and you see the red line going through it? That is the Planckian curve. That red line represents where correct color temperature is at the different color temperatures. To give you some idea of just how accurate these top of the range LED lights are, the lightest correction gel available is a 1/8 correction gel, and that is the equivalent of 24 increments of adjustment. So let's start off by looking at just how accurate the Gemini was. At 3,200 degrees Kelvin, the Gemini was 3 increments out. At 4,000 degrees Kelvin, the Gemini was smack on the Planckian curve. At 5,600 degrees Kelvin, the Gemini is 11 increments out. Now, how does that compare to the more expensive Skypanel? Well, at 3,200 degrees Kelvin, the Skypanel is smack on the money. It is smack on pure white. Now I find that interesting because I've always noticed that in studio environments that the Skypanel matches perfectly into tungsten, and now I know why. At 4000 degrees Kelvin, the Skypanel is only 2 increments out. At 5600 degrees Kelvin, the Skypanel is 5 increments out. So as you can tell by those results, when it comes to pure white, the Gemini performs extremely well. So congratulations to the Gemini team for your hard work. And it goes toe-to-toe with the Skypanel. Now let's have a look at how the two lights stack up in terms of color rendering. Now the Gemini should be leaps and bounds ahead because, well, it's newer LED technology, and also it's got 2 sets of white emitters. It's got warm white and cool white, whereas the Skypanel only has 1 set of white emitters. Now before we get into the results, I'd like to explain my testing procedure. I don't test using CRI or TLCI. Both systems use a limited amount of colors in their testing. And the problem with television lighting consistency index is a lot of manufacturers in film and television are specifically making their lights to hit those 24 colors that are in the test to get a high score so they can sell more lights. But it doesn't give you a clear indication of all the other colors that the camera can see. So I'll just explain a TM30 color vector test. So on the graphic here, you can see there are 2 circles. The black circle is your reference circle. So if the light had a 100% perfect score, that's where the graphic would be indicated. Now the red circle is what the light is actually testing at. So basically, the closer the 2 circles are together, the better the light. Now you will notice there are 2 scores, which is unusual, and that's the thing I like about TM30. The top score tests the actual color rendition. The bottom score, or the second score down, is the saturation of the colors. So what that means is, are the colors being saturated correctly? Are they as vibrant as they should be? So you want to have that score close to 100. For example, if that score was really low, say about 50s, then your colors would all be pastels. Now to give you some idea of scale, this test result is for a HMI. It's for a 2.5K HMI with a brand new globe, and it's been running for about 5 hours, so it's well and truly run in. So the reason I'm pointing this out is this score is only 93.5. Anything above 90 is a good score. Anything above 90 in TM30 is a good score. Anything above 85 is okay. Now to give you an example, a 575 HMI would score around 85 to 87 typically with a brand new globe. Alright, so let's get into the test results. At 3200 degrees Kelvin, the Skypanel performs better. At 4000 degrees Kelvin, the Gemini outperforms the Skypanel. At 5600 degrees Kelvin, the Gemini once again outperforms the Skypanel. Now I'm going to talk about areas where the Skypanel completely obliterates this unit. But in these areas, I'm not going to put much weight on them because they're all about the firmware. So sooner or later, these guys are going to catch up with the programming. It's only really a matter of time. So don't really put a lot of weight on these things. Okay, in the gels library, this has 48 gels, which are all Roscoe. The Skypanel has over 380 Roscoe and Lee gels, so quite a substantial difference. The Skypanel also has an advanced color menu, which means you can select a gel and then modify the color. So for example, you can change the saturation, you can change the red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, and yellow values. But again, that's firmware, so it's only a matter of time before these guys catch up. The Skypanel, you can select your colors via RGB. You can't do that with this unit, but again, that's firmware. With the Skypanel, you can select your color using XY color coordinate values. It's only a matter of time before these guys get around to getting that sussed out. However, there is one more massive difference between the Skypanel and the other 5 LED lights I've tested this week, which all have special effects modes. the Arri Skypanel has an absolutely massive amount of processing power. So like me, you're probably wondering, who cares what the computer inside it is? It's just a light. I'm not going to use the computer to do my tax return. I'm just going to be using it as a light. That's what I used to think up until this week. So putting all these lights up that had color effects modes in them, or special effects modes, you could literally see the difference in processing power between the cheapest light and the most expensive light. Where it shows up is in subtleties. So if you've got special effects like fire or candle flicker, the Skypanel really has subtleties in it. These lights tend to feel like they're just turning on and off. So in review, you can get more light level out of the Skypanel. The Skypanel will give you 70% more light level with the intensifier and at roughly the same beam angles. The Skypanel has a wider flood, which means it's better for lighting cycs. And it has higher processing power. So if you're in that 0.001% of people who are going to use it for high-speed special effects, it is capable of doing that. However, the Gemini has two massive advantages. It is roughly about 2,000 Aussie dollars cheaper, which makes it really good value. And it is very, very simple to use. Now, before we go, I'd like to say a very big thank you to Cine Australasia for letting me borrow the Gemini to do this review. Thank you very, very much. I'm Andrew Locke. See you on the next episode of Gaffer Gear.